for me to be able to be where I'm standing today is because I start working in Karola. I start working in me. I start realizing that as I working and healing Karola, the entrepreneur, Karola, the leader, Karola, the mom, Karola, the daughter, the friend, was evolving and becoming a better person. And all that pain, I start to transform into positivity and start understanding that I was not the only one. There is so many women out there that have been through so much. And I'm like, maybe I can help a little bit.
This episode contains discussions of sensitive topics including sexual abuse, suicide, and life-threatening situations. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to AudioLife, the podcast where we tell your story in your voice. Today, you're going to hear part 2 of my conversation with Karola Castro, a woman who wears many hats: entrepreneur, artist, women's empowerment leader, and champion of children. If you missed part 1, go back and listen to it now. We talked about Karola's early years and experiences with abuse, discrimination, and some of the key events that have marked her as a person. Karola's childhood and teen years were riddled with pain and trauma, but she always clung on to love and hope. Today, we will hear the rest of Karola's journey that eventually leads her back to her home country, Honduras. Karola will share the moment she hit rock bottom at the Santa Barbara Pier, and then slowly and surely, Karola begins to transform her life's pain into love, healing, and positivity. You don't want to miss this. Is there a special person who has made a significant impact on your life?
Yes. And it's not one. I will say my mother, of course, because I learned so much from her. She's also a leader. She thrived through the pain. But also my 2 daughters, Sonia, Nicolette, and Kimiko. I will say them. Because of them, I want to be a better person. Because of them, I want to be a better woman, a better mother, a better citizen.
As a mother of girls, very powerful there too. And I think it's poetic in the sense that you have this opportunity to raise your daughters a bit differently than you were raised, give them in the environment that you didn't have the chance to have. And you mentioned earlier that there are just things that you've learned from your own experience that you would protect your daughters from. What is important to you as a mother and as a survivor of trauma that you want to pass on to your daughters, that you want to make sure that they either know or that they have as part of them? What's important to you in that way?
The most important thing that I want them to know is life itself. They said that life is not fair, but no, let's not blame life. Let's blame each other, people, right? Because we have the power to construct or to destroy. So I want them to know that you are the architect of your life. And yes, life is going to be tough. Yes, we're going to go through so many things, but there is always hope. Always.
And hope was one of the, when I asked you how to 3 words to describe yourself, hope was the third one. I remember that. All right, we're going to back up a little bit, and if you could share maybe a pivotal time in your young adulthood, let's say. I think where we left off was right around the time that you broke ties with the gentleman who you worked for a number of years, and he's the father of, I guess, your first daughter. I'm trying to connect the dot between young Karola to who you are now, and obviously you've traversed many experiences since your, I guess, 20s till now. Are there one or two moments along your journey where it changed you, it was pivotal and brought you closer to where you are now? Maybe it was career related, maybe it was personal, but were there a couple of key moments in your journey that you can think of?
Yeah, I will say after I finished my relationship with Oscar, that's his name, he had the business, and I'm like, I don't care about the business. I don't care about anything. I'm just going to leave. And I left. So from there, I decided to move no, I stayed for a while in Honduras, and I met this other guy who did the same thing. He almost killed me.
Oh my goodness.
And after that, after that, I decided that, I was like, I will never go out with a Honduran. That's what I said. Because I
Okay.
thought, at that moment that that they like to beat up woman and kill her. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
So I moved to the Cayman Islands over there, and it was a different vibe, opportunity, right? I started working,
Okay.
they took me and I started working in a bar. I was a
Okay.
bartender.
Okay.
I know nothing about bars, but I started working as a bartender. In the beginning, it was really tough because I started missing my family. I miss my mother. I miss my daughter. Then there was only girls working at the bar, and there is that jealousy when this a new girl and stuff like that. So
Mm,
it was kind of tough in the beginning. And then you also have clients that are drunk and they want to like do extra stuff, and you are not willing. So, but then I talk about that because working at that bar, I got to meet two wonderful men. That one of them became one of my best friend, and
oh,
with the other one, I had uh, a relationship that ended up really bad because he lied to me. He told me he was single and he was married. But
ugh.
by the time I find out that he was married, I was really, really, really in love with him.
Mhm.
So we stayed together for a while, but that didn't work either. I'm not proud of that, but it's something that I have to say because I think about where I'm going and the things that I'm doing, and I don't want nobody to come with my past and try to block me or sabotage me. So I have to be honest 100%, and I apologize. So over there, my friend started treating me different, and people would treat me really, really different. I start feeling a little bit important,
Mm,
because the attention that I was getting was like, wow, completely different. People
yeah.
was treating me like if I was a real human, and my color have nothing to do with anything. And so I stayed in the Cayman Island for 3 years, but then I have to go to the United States because my father called me and he said that he was going to die. I have almost 24 years without seeing my dad at that time. And I wanted to meet my father. I wanted to see what he looks like, because he never came back. He had communication with us, but he never returned to Honduras. So before he died, I wanted to see him and talk to him. So I went to America. This is so funny because I always tell the story to my friends. They know this, that is true. I went to America with $140 and some summer clothes in September. And I went to New York City with my cousin, and the person who's supposed to pick us up to take us to my dad's apartment because he was at the Bellevue Hospital. And she never showed up because
Oh
my
no.
aunt, one of his sister who live in New York at that moment, told her not to take us there. Remember the past I told you, my aunts, they were very discriminated with us and stuff like that. So I ended up staying with an aunt who lived in one of the projects by Yankee Stadium in the Bronx.
Okay.
But she lived with 4 kids and her husband, and it was one bedroom.
Okay.
So my aunt said, "You can stay." And I came with a cousin of mine. She's like, "You guys can stay here for only 1 week because, and they're all boys." And I'm like, yeah, I just want to see my dad. So I went to see my dad. And when I entered that room, we have to put all my kind of masks and stuff because what happened, his partner have AIDS and never told him anything. So by the time he had it, it was all over his system and he was completely done. So I saw my father for the first time after 20 something years because I was like 5 when he left. And then I was going to be 24, I believe. So it was like 20 or something like that. I enter with my aunt and my cousin, and we all with the white suit and the face mask and stuff. The only thing he could see was my eyes. And my aunt asked him, they call him Tito. And she said, Tito. And it was so funny because they have something, a tube that they were feeding him and something in his hand that was covering his hand. He have, I think, I'm not sure, it was pneumonia or something like that, that, you have to be very careful. And he looked and she said, do you know who she is? And he said, no. And then she said, he used to call me Carla. And then she said, this is Carla. And we all start crying. Everybody, even the doctor and the nurse. He started like wanted to touch me you know, and it was really beautiful. It was painful, but beautiful because I didn't have the time or the chance to spend time with my puppy. I used to call him puppy. And the most amazing thing is like the next day when I went to visit him, those days that I stay, I make sure that I will go and visit him. He was sitting in the bed, and I was like, wow. Yesterday he was laying, now he's sitting. And by the third day, he was sitting and eating, you know, like smushy food, but he was eating and walking in a walker to the bathroom. So the doctor came and she said, I'm going to send a social worker to speak with you. And I said, okay. So this guy came and he said, you need to stay here. This is a miracle. We've never seen anything like this. And the doctor is like, yeah, I think you should be a doctor. And I started laughing. I was young. I have a lot of unworthiness feeling inside of me that I didn't know. So I thought, they're just telling me this because they want me to feel good about myself. So I stayed there, and by the time I left, it was like 5 week. My father looked fabulous. It was amazing, the transformation. So for me, that was like, wow. So I'm like, I have to stay. I have to stay. But I didn't have a place to stay in New York. So I have a cousin in Florida, and he's like, you can stay here, work here, and then save some money, and then you can go and take care of your dad. And I'm like, sure. So I went to Florida for, I think it was like 4 or 5 months, and I was working. And just one day, they're like, somebody called me and say, your dad just died. And I was like, what? I didn't cry because it was like, I was just in shock. But I moved to New York because he had a case of a doctor was stealing his cornea, and he sued this eye doctor. And when I was there, he called his lawyer and he said, if something happened to me, I want you to take care of my daughter. So the lawyer called me because my aunt, the one didn't allow the friend to take us to the apartment. She went to the lawyer and said, I'm gonna be the one. So she creamed my dad without cremation. They burned him in ashes and stuff. And she put in the certificate they give you, the death certificate, that he have no wife and no children's. So when she went to the lawyer said, you can get in real trouble because he called me from the hospital with his daughter. So he called me and he's like, you have to come to New York. And I moved to New York City. I lived in New York for 3 years. It was amazing, and it was good and bad. It was good because I started working right away. but it was an adventure because I slept in the floor of a little apartment of an aunt. I have another aunt who lived their house for 3 years. And then I got crazy because I was like, I cannot take another day without my daughter.
She
And
was
I
back in
stay in
Honduras
America.
still?
Yeah.
Okay.
I stayed in America and I lost my visa and I became an illegal alien. Yeah, although my father, I think he was an American citizen, but he didn't apply for us because when he become resident, he lied. He said that he was not married because he married somebody for papers and stuff like that.
Mm.
So yeah, and I couldn't take it anymore. She stayed with my mom, and I say, if I don't bring her, I'm going back.
Mm-hmm. Throughout these years of going from place to place and, another chapter in your life, I can hear that you've grown in confidence too as the time went on, and you talked about yourself feeling unworthy, and that comes from not from you but from the place that you were, the origin from where you came from. But little by little, it sounds like you started to realize, oh, people don't, I'm not unworthy. I can do things and people see me as valuable. Can you fast forward to maybe not right now, but what brought you back to Honduras eventually?
Yeah, so after New York, I decided that I wanted to move because for me, I'm talking about myself. It was not a place that I wanted to raise my daughter. The lifestyle in New York was too fast. People always have an attitude. I had the New York attitude as well. So at that time, my brother moved to California and he's like, oh, California is really mellow. You should move to here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. So they gave me some money from my dad case. And I live in New York for almost 3 years. So they gave me that money and I went to California, LA to be exactly. And my brother is a barber and I'm like, let's open a beauty shop and, let's become wealthy and happy family and stuff like that, help my mom and stuff like that, because that's one thing that I always make sure when I was working. I used to take care of my mom, especially because
Mm.
she was my daughter. And that year I got to bring my daughter with me. So we moved to California, Los Angeles. And when I was in New York, I didn't mention this, but I was working. I would start working with patients. I become a home health aide, but I started working with patients with AIDS
Mm.
because I felt guilty that my father died
Mm.
and I couldn't help him. So I started working. I worked like 3 years, something like that, with people with AIDS, and it was fabulous. I have wonderful people in my life that I know that they were very happy with me. So I moved to California and we opened this shop with my brother. And in the beginning, it was great, but then started becoming this thing of I'm the one who's doing all the work. So we started having conflict with my brother. The system had changed him. He became more Americanized, the American way. You don't believe in family, or I'm not saying everybody, but it was not like we were a Thai family. Now you have to pay your bills and stuff like that. And it was the day that he's like, you guys need to leave. So with my daughter, and I think she was like at that time 11, my oldest daughter, she's now 30. And I remember that I'm like, where are we going to go? We spent all the money doing this and we don't have any money to. He's like, I don't care, because his lady at the time, she didn't want us there. So I had a friend there. They say, oh, I have this little studio. If you don't mind, I don't have gas or light right now, but you can stay here. So we went to this supermarket, and in the supermarket before, I'm not sure now, but before you can take the little cart to your house. So we went to get those carts, and with my daughter, we took all our clothes to this place, and it was not that far. It was like probably 5 blocks away. And when I was in New York, I wanted to study, but I couldn't. But I took my GED, And once I moved to California, and then I moved from my brothers, and we have this dispute from the shop. He ended up staying with the shop. I ended up having nothing. I had this friend from Colombia and say, I think we should try to become massage therapists. And I was like, what? It's like, yeah, it's like 3 months and you can make some money and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know if I can work in a spa. I don't have papers. And he's like, oh, let's go. I'm going to pay for it. Come on. Because that's one thing I would say. I met really wonderful people, even though that I was going through these things. It's like the creator, my ancestors were always with me, putting people to help me through this journey. So I went to the school with him. It was great the first 2 weeks. And then the second week is like, this is not for me. Bye. But I ended up staying because I loved the energy and everything that the teacher was teaching me and everything. And after a month being there, he's like, oh, I met this woman who's going to open this virtual spa, and I told her about you, and she's like, bring her to me. So he took me to an interview with this lady who opened the first virtual spa in California. That used to be free virtual spa. I don't know if it exists anymore. And I was in the interview, and I was give her and her partner a massage, and I gave them both a half an hour massage, and they're like, you're hired. I was like, what?
Wonderful.
Yeah, like a freelance, and it was, for me, it was like a joke because my first client was this guy who used to work in a 106 in Park in BET, AJ Holloway, I think was his name. And it was a celebrity at that moment. And I was like, what? I'm working with celebrities? And I gave him a massage, and he spoke to the concierge of the hotel and said, this is the best massage I ever had in my life. And that opened my way. Every party, every event, I was there. Through there, I met a very wealthy family, and the lady, she just loved me. So she took me from her win, and she's like, I like your style. I like you. You're a very hardworking woman. You have your daughter. I didn't have relationship after I broke up with that guy. I date one or two guys, but it was the same. I felt that they were doing me a favor by being with me. That's where the unworthiness come. And it never worked. So I ended up being single for like, I don't know, like 10, 13 years. And my good daughter was growing, and I got to work with this family. It was amazing because it was like a different thing. It opened my eyes in a different way. We were very wealthy. I got paid really well. And I started living a very nice life. I moved to California and Santa Barbara, from LA to Santa Barbara. And then, they travel cross country, and I used to go with them everywhere, VIP, everything. And it was like, I was working in Hollywood, and then with this, it was like living the dream. But it became very demanding, because when you work, you have to put on the work, and it was long hours, 18 hours a day, sometimes maybe one day a week, a month, depending, where we were in going in that particular time. And my daughter was home. She got a scholarship in one of their school, and she was basically raising herself, because I was working. I was providing everything she needed except her mama. And I will say there I worked, but it was like a lot of women working in that house, maybe like 40 of us. And it was not a good thing for me because I was the only black Honduras. And I think there was some, I would say jealousy there. I don't want to call it like that, but there was some jealousy there. And they gave me hell. And I took it. I took it for almost 7 years, until one day they play a really dirty game on me, and the lady came all worked out and told me, da, 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 and you effing work for us. And I look at her and I say, yes, I do work for you. And I walk away and I say, Karola, it's true you work for her, but it's your choice. But your choice right now is you don't want to work here anymore. So I left. And I told my daughter, our life is going to transform. So I lost everything. I got into a depression. I lost everything. I went to live to this friend's house, and I have this other lady who took me to this other lady who read fortune stuff, like fortune teller. And I started getting desperate, listening to what this fortune teller was telling me, spending what I didn't have on her. She played a really tricky game on me, and it was not a fun thing. I started looking at my life going down and down and down. And I asked my brother to give me a place to stay. I ended up with a friend, and then I asked my brother to give me a place to stay. And he's like, okay, come here. So I stay with my brother again. And as I was saying with here, I met this guy. And that time I'm like, I'm going to go to fashion school because I always wanted to be a fashion designer, and my daughter as well. And we started going to Tritech, I think is the name of the school in LA. And I met this guy, and I wanted to create this brand of t-shirts and bohemian style clothing. And he told me that he could help me do it. So he started showing me his work, and I like it. Then we started talking. One thing take to the other, like 5 months being friends and planning. He's like, I fall in love with you. I want to be with you. And I'm like, I give him a straight talk. I don't have time to play. I'm getting older. I have a daughter who's going to be 21 pretty soon, or she was like 19. And I don't have time. And I do want kids. I do want kids. I don't know how many, but I want more kids in my life. And he's like, oh, me too. So we started dating, and I got pregnant by him. And it was a beautiful pregnancy in the beginning, and we have a really good relationship. But sometimes I learned that when you have a relationship, you have to take the time to know the person, especially know about culture, because he's half Japanese, half black. His mother is Japanese, so he's very Japanese race. And I didn't understand their culture. They're very, very, I would say, like, I'm not going to say strict, but they are very, very disciplined.
Mm.
And in Honduras, we don't have any discipline. I'm honest. Like, people over here, it's like, ah. And so it was this uncontrollable woman with this man who want, a person who can respect him and listen to what he have to say. Although I will say I learned so much that I apply the things that I learned from him today in my life.
Mm.
I didn't know at the moment, because some things that he will tell me, it was for me to be a better person, to grow. But the way it was presented to me, I felt that he was like putting me down. And I have this wall, like, I will never allow anybody to put me down. Everybody put me down my whole life, and blah, blah, blah. So we ended up living together, and we moved from LA to Las Vegas, and I left my apartment, and he told me to take care of the baby and don't worry about anything. I will tell every single woman who's listening to this, never in your life do that.
And now for a word from our sponsors. Ready to share your stories and life philosophy, or capture those of a parent or grandparent? Or maybe a corporate package is right for you to build connection across your workforce and add value to your clients. Visit audiolife.io today to learn more. Our listeners will get 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. AudioLife, where memories find their voice.
You have to have a backup. If you're financially secure, you can do it. But if you're not, don't do it. I learned I didn't even have money to buy my own pads. Whenever I get my period, I always have to be asking for every single penny, even for the baby's milk. And whenever I wanted to work as a masseuse, he didn't like it because I was going to touch somebody else, especially if it was a male. He was not. And one day, one of his friends asked me, I have my boss who need a massage. And I'm like, just bring him. I need money. So I give him a massage, and the guy paid me $150. And that for him was the most insulting thing I could ever done to him. So we start having so many arguments, and the relationship started deteriorating. I'm not going to say that it was his fault, my fault. I'm not going to be blaming anybody. I think it was our fault. But there was a baby in the middle. And there was a point that he's like, I'm going to call immigration on you. And I grabbed his phone because I didn't have a phone. And I dialed 911 and I said, call them, tell them to come and pick me up. And he's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm crazy. And then all of a sudden, everything's Mother's Day came, because it was around that time in 2015 and 2016. And he's like, would you like to go to LA and visit your friends and stuff like that? And I had a really good friend in Santa Barbara, California. And I said, yeah, I could call my friend from Ethiopia. And she's like, oh, yeah, it will be good. I want to see the baby and everything. But in his mind, it was a different thing. So I woke up that morning with a really bad feeling. But I still got in the car. And as we were driving to LA, there was a car on fire. And he go through that car. There was a line, but he didn't care. I'm like, what? This is crazy. You are jeopardizing our life. And you can feel the energy. So once we were in LA, he took me to Union Station. And he's like, okay. And I was like, okay, what? It's like, I'm going to leave you here. You go to your friend. I'm like, I don't have any money. How am I going to get in the train? And he's like, well, I don't know. You figure it out. And we have a really big argument. And he's like, I care about the baby, but it's really easy for me not to care about her. And I was like, I never heard something like that before in my life. And I was like, what? And he's like, I'm going to take the baby away from you. And I'm like, no, you're not going to take my child away from me. And it's a big thing, right? Everybody who was there listening and stuff. And he's like, well, and these words really they hunted me for so long. He said that you're a loser. You're never going to do anything with your life. And you're going to ruin the baby's life. And it's really painful until today, it's not painful because he said it. Now it's painful because if you're going through so much and someone that you love dearly, that you thought that this person was going to be the love of your life, the person that you're going to have a family and everything, say this kind of things to you, they can destroy you, So I went to my friend's house and I was there for a while, maybe like a month. And she's like, you got to go. I cannot take you. I was depressed. It was horrible. And then she's like, I cannot take you here anymore. She rented me a car and I drove back to Las Vegas with the baby to the house. And I got there at midnight. And when I tried my key was not working. And I touched the doorbell. And I see him because there was like a glass thing through the door. I see him coming, running all happy. And when he looked through the glass thingy, he saw me and he just backed up and reversed and didn't open the door. He called his mother. And at that moment, I have a telephone because I have communication with his mom. And his mom is like, you got to go from there. And I'm like, where am I going to go? I don't have a place to go. I don't have money. I don't have he kept everything, all my things. And she's like, well, go and we're going to figure it out, but you can't be there. And I was like, he was expecting somebody. So I stayed there. And all of a sudden I saw this brand new car get out. And I'm like, oh, he got a new car. So I drove back to California. And my friend is like, I'm sorry, but you cannot stay here. So I asked another friend. I went to YMCA, a couple of shelters, to a church, to ask for places. They're like, no, you cannot stay here because you're illegal. And I said, but I have an American baby. And they're like, that we don't care. We can put you in the system. And I was like, what is going on? I called several churches that I'm not going to give them the publicity. And they say, I'm sorry, we only help our people from our community. I was like, what is this? So I remember I ended up in a place in Santa Barbara that until today I have a picture that a homeless person took from me and the baby. And that day I started walking bare feet in the street of Santa Barbara, California. And I went to the ocean. And I remember I got in the ocean with the baby. You know, we got hit by a big wave. It was crazy. And then I'm like, it was getting like dark, like 6:30 p.m. And I'm like, I'm going to walk to that pier and I'm going to jump with the baby because I cannot swim and the baby cannot swim as well. I was going to end my life. And when I got to the pier, I was ready to jump. I was looking at everybody and I saw the light. So I returned with my bare feet, walking in the streets. And I went to my friend's apartment and I said, look, I need to go back home. I don't have money, but I need to go back home. And she's like, I'm going to buy you the ticket, but you have to pay me back. I'm like, I don't know how. I'll pay you back. Buy me the ticket. And she booked me that ticket. And on December 16th, I think 2016, I came back to Honduras with Kimiko.
With Kimiko, your second daughter. I've heard that this journey doesn't. This is the second you and I have chatted earlier, and I remember hearing a lot of this, but it's as powerful the second time hearing it as it was the first. And I can see as you're telling your story, you're reliving it every time because of how important those events were. Karola, you've been shaped by really awful things, but at the same time, I feel like from listening to you, you've been strengthened and refined every single time. You've come out and you've evolved. You must have been exhausted. You must be tired even now. But how beautiful it is. You've taken every experience so far and you've added something to yourself. And so as our last portion of this interview, tell us what you've been doing since moving back to Honduras and where you are today. What are you working on and since you've moved back?
Yeah, so when I came back, it was a different story because, you know, I used to take care of my mom and my family, the ones who live in the house, and now I came broke with nothing. Yeah. I didn't have nothing, basically. And it was a moment that my mom felt threatened because she thought that I was coming to take everything that she had. You know, everybody was, your daughter is coming because she wants to take your house. She wants to take this, blah, blah, blah. So I have a really bad relationship with my mom, and especially because I never told her the things that happened to me as a child. So one day I was at her house in the beginning, and all of a sudden I heard somebody like fixing this, the roof. And when I went outside, it was one of the guys who used to molest me as a child. And I look at him and I was like, what? And I have my baby. And then Kimiko was such a cute baby. And she had these big cheeks and these big legs. And my mom is telling the guy, Pedro, look at my grandchild, how cute she is. Look at those big legs. And for me, my mentality is not about cuteness. This is a predator. Yeah. So I told my mom, And when I told my mom was like, well, if you never say anything, it's because you liked it. And I got so angry with her, so angry. I have so much resentment at that moment that I'm like, she doesn't like me. She doesn't love me. How she's going to say that? So I left the house. I ended up coming here where I'm staying right now, which is the house. This house, my mother and her sisters, they were born here. This
Oh, wow.
house, this property, my great grandmother bought it long time ago. I don't even know, maybe over 80, 85 years. And she left it to her daughter. My aunt is in Boston, and she left my mom in charge. And my mom was rented to some people who didn't pay rent. And I'm like, well, if they're not paying rent, I'm going there. So I came and live here, and I separate myself from my mom. I stopped talking to my mom for like 6 months. And when I was here, the property was really terrible. Um, we have trees, but no plants. And we have a well, but the well was like garbage. They throw all the garbage in there and everything. So I start healing by cleaning the property. And the people who live around, my neighbors, because there's a couple apartments in this property, they start getting upset because I will clean first where I live and then in front of, so they didn't like it. They're like, oh, she wants to come. And they all ended up leaving, because, oh, she wants to take, so they tell my mom, oh, she wants to take care over you and blah, blah, blah. So my mom start getting more. And I start healing I start planting flowers and trees, fruit and stuff like that. I start cleaning. It took me almost 6.5 months to clean that well, to get water, because that's one thing that is becoming unavailable in Honduras, although we have many rivers. But water is something that it's not available every day for everybody. So that was a healing process. And then I start going to the ocean, which is a block and a half away from where I live. And all these rocks, and I start picking up rocks. I used to go with Kimiko and bring a backpack full of rocks. They will speak to me, they're like, take me, they're so beautiful. And they start calling me crazy. So I was the crazy of the neighborhood. And all of a sudden, I'm like, what am I going to do with all these rocks? So I have a dream, and it's like, make a chair. So I make this beautiful chair called La Silla del Todopoderoso, which I will share with you the pictures. It's a beautiful work of art, but in Honduras, people don't appreciate art. They see you like they see art as something that is not valuable. So I realized through art, I will not be able to express myself because they look at me as crazy. And my artistic way is very different. I don't know how to draw perfect, but my mind, I create things and I want to bring them, and I collaborate with people. That's the way that I express myself. And the chair became really, really famous. And I started, first, I started selling food. But then at the time I was vegan, and people over here, they like their meat. And I didn't feel comfortable. So then I opened a store that sends second, like a thrift shop, small one.
Secondhand? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, secondhand. And I had that business, and it was good. I was doing good. I was good, but I wanted more. I'm like, I never have the opportunity to go to college. And in Honduras, the opportunity to go to college, it's rare. The education system is broken. And to go to college, you have to have a lot of money, or you at least have a good job so you can able to go to college, because an average person here make $150 a month, but the lifestyle for a person is like $600 a month if you want to have a regular lifestyle. So imagine me and Kimiko making $100-$200 a month, and I want to go to college. It was impossible. So I started looking ways, and there was this lady who say to me, oh, there is this center called Ciudad Mujer. You can go there. They will show you things so you can become an entrepreneur and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, sure, I'm going to go. So I went there. And at that time, they have the customer service workshop. And also they have a workshop to do they call it bisuteria, which is you learn how to do earrings and jewelry, So I was really I got into the jewelry making, and I started doing all these beautiful necklaces. I'm like, oh, and they're like, we're going to expose to the public. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to become so popular with this and stuff like that. And a week before the graduation, COVID hit us.
No.
So I have to close the shop. I have to stop my jewelry project. And everybody was so afraid of everybody. But for me, honestly, I was like really relaxed because I will go to the street because nobody can go out. Like you have to be at home. That was the theme, stay home. And I will see the street clean because Honduras is beautiful. But now the people don't take care of the street. It's really dirty and stuff like that, which I think it can be fixed. And I will make sure to fix that in the future. But I was like, oh my God, the streets are so clean and it's empty. This is my town, my city. I love you. And my mom was like, you're crazy. You're going to get sick. Don't leave the house and stuff. I'm like, no, this is an opportunity to thrive. And everybody was so afraid. So one day I'm like sweeping the backyard and we have fruits. We have mangoes and we have this mutton pepper. They call it, it's kind of spicy peppers. And like I told you before, in my family, everybody is a great cook. So I make mango jam and I make the hot sauce. And I'm like, because it's stay home, I can take mango jams to people home so they can buy it, and I saw an opportunity there. So I started selling mangoes jam and the hot sauce. Then somebody from that center called me and said, Karola, we are going to teach people how to do a business plan for entrepreneurship. Would you like to learn? But it's going to be online, something new. Would you like interested in learning? And I'm like, sure, take me. It was kind of boring because I'm not a technological person. And now I wear glasses because of that. But I'm glad because I learned a lot. So they teach me that to have more impact, I have to have a brand, and my product have to have a name. So I call it Mama Pluxi, which is Pluxi is my mother nickname that her mom gave her when she was a kid. And Mama Pluxi is because everybody call her Mama. And I did it as honoring my mom because I want her to know that she's very important to me regardless of. And Mama Pluxi became one of the most popular products in Honduras. The president of the nation at the moment, he gave me a recognition of Entrepreneur Woman of the Year. And it was amazing because everybody knew and everybody was buying, but I was not really seeing any profit coming in because I was selling it for example, 19 lempiras when I was spending 21, so I didn't understand how the values and stuff. So I'm like, no, I need to start learning about these things. So through that, I start looking in different ways. And the way the things work here are not that great. So I'm like, I'm going to look out, so I start looking for like free workshops online in a different country, like America, Sweden, blah, blah, blah. So then they have the Entrepreneur Woman in the AWE, which is program that is a UTH, it is a university in the United States Embassy, and I took that, and I won the one of the prizes. That year I was one of the winners. So with that, I learned so much through their program, and through their program, I was introduced to another program called Women Impact Summit that is once a year, and in that summit, I heard this lady from Sweden called Sarah Kallemers. She had this Glow for Equality coaching program, and it was a free. And I'm like, but you have to apply. So I apply. I think the cost is like 3,000 euros. And they like, oh, sorry. Yeah, we cannot take you this time, blah, blah, blah. And I was so disappointed. But I'm like, okay, it was not for me. But next, like after 6 months, they sent me a letter saying, okay, we have the program for you, because the team that time, it was end all mutilation in women or something like that. But this team was empowering women to empower others. And I didn't understand how it works. So I was offended because they didn't accept me the first time. I'm like, no, I'm not going to go. But then I'm like, I'm losing my opportunity. I talk to myself and I'm like, this is an opportunity that you can try. So I took that coaching program for 6 months. And as an entrepreneur, I learned in 2.5 years, I was not being where I wanted, but I was putting all the work and all my time, and I was doing everything in the business. And you cannot do everything in one business. In the beginning, maybe it's fine, but after 2.5 years, you have to be able to have that people that you can run the company and stuff like that. And it was not working, so I wanted to know. So after the AWE, I got her with other women, and I said, look, obviously there's a lot of organizations that help women, but they don't really know what we need. We are entrepreneur women. We know what we need. So we started the Garden of Entrepreneur Women. Se llama Jardín de Mujeres Emprendedoras, Jame. And it's a nonprofit ONG where we especially focus on helping women to thrive. Even, for example, you don't know what you want to do, but you want to have a business or you want to do something. We help you, but our main focus is first the emotional well-being, the mental health, because for me to be able to be where I'm standing today is because I start working in Karola. I start working in me. I start realizing that as I working and healing Karola, the entrepreneur, Karola the leader, Karola the mom, Karola the daughter, the friend, was evolving and becoming a better person. And all that pain, I start to transform into positivity and start understanding that I was not the only one. There is so many women out there that have been through so much. And I'm like, maybe I can help a little bit. So let me put a little grain of sand so we can all thrive. So we started the Garden of Entrepreneur Women. Today is 128 women in our circle. And we are not legalized yet. We already put all the papers, but it's a process. So that's why we cannot ask for donations and stuff like that. But what we do barbecues, we do things and create these funds. There are other partners that, like USA, that reach us to work with us because they're seeing that what we're doing is working. Like our first workshop, there was for emotional well-being. We said we're going to start small, so we invited 20 women, and we were expecting to finish with 10. So we started with 28 and we finished with 30, and they were so happy. And they were like, why we don't have these things anymore? Because here, to go to a psychologist, you need to have a good amount of money in your bank account so you can be able to pay for it, because it's not just going to be one time. So we start doing that, and from there we also train them in the emotional well-being with the financial part as well. Because if you're not trained financially, then you cannot work your business the right way. Because over here, like one thing that I used to do before, I used to use my money and the business money, and business doesn't work like that. So as I go, I learning. I have no idea how to start an ONG or to have an organization. And until today, I'm still learning. But if we have 128 women with us, it means that we're doing something good. But through the process, and as we grow, my daughter, Kimiko, um, she was abused a couple of times by other women. Like they used to beat her up and treat her really bad, to the point that she stopped communicating. And some people call it autism or many ways, but the educational system in Honduras are not ready for this type of children, and I'm honest, like, uh, they put kids with autism, with kids with Down syndrome, with kids with this other particular situation. And for me, the way that I see it's like, if you have a child who have special needs, they need to be treated especially for that, uh, for their case. So I recently realized that one of the ladies who was helping me while I was going to work, take care of my daughter, she was actually abusing my daughter. And I was like, what am I doing? I am helping other women. Here I am, this leader. Everybody knows me, blah, blah, blah. But my, in my house, this is going on. How am I helping? Because in the beginning, my idea was helping children's. And I said, no, we have to go through their moms first and work the mental health and all the things. So, but in the end, I'm like, no, I need to start working with children's as well. So right now I'm working and opening autism for kids for autism academy. And the name is Kimiko. And I'm going to name it Kimiko because Kimiko means noble child in Japanese, of course. In English means noble child. And for me, I believe that all the children are nobles. And also because as I've been working with my daughter, I see and I understand the necessities that she needs. So I'm creating this academy because I want to help other women, because as I learning, there are so many other women in the same situation that some of them, they cannot send their kids to school because they've been told your child is too much for the other kids. They distract, they're too hyperactive. They put different levels on the children's. And that's the mission that I'm doing right now, the Kimiko Academy. So if any of the listeners out there are interested in contacting me to help, I'm more than open and grateful for you to reach out for that. So this is how I ended up here. I have Mama Pluxi, which is my business. I also have Hame, which is the Garden of Entrepreneur Women. And now el proyecto de Academia Kimiko, which is the Novel Child Academy.
Karola, you have done, you moved back in 2016, you said?
Yes.
You have fast-tracked your learning, your growth, taking all of the pain and transformed it into these gems and pieces of jewels to shine in Honduras with children and women. And the impact will be enormous. This is just the beginning. You're still young. You have a ways to go. So I'm so honored to get to hear this story. And whoever's listening, I have no doubt you would have heard something along Karola's journey that you resonate with. I'd like to wrap this up. And I think this was a great way to not end the story, because this is just the next chapter for you, Karola. However way, we hope we get to hear more of the 3 projects you have working on now, and then who knows what other projects you have. You are going to transform Honduras. That's what I hear. You're going to change your beautiful country that you love so much. And I'm so appreciative that you always heard the call and the voice that led you back to where you are now, because you have much work to do. Is there anything else that you'd, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
What I would like to say for people nowadays, because, the world, everybody thinks that it's crazy, that things are not going well with everything that is going on, is that there's always hope. I believe in transformation. And one of the things that I do and I learn is, with love, we can transform everything. And I work from the center of my heart. And from the center of my heart, I send love to all of you. Thank you.
You've been listening to Audio Life, the podcast where we tell your story in your voice. And I've been your host today, again, Grace Chen, and we've just had this wonderful, beautiful conversation with Karola Castro. If you like what you've heard today, don't forget to rate the show and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Karola, thank you so much.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.